And now, this is December 6th, just before the ship runs aground. Consulting sea charts for the course he guessed he was on, the captain saw no numbers that corresponded to the soundings that had been made through the night. And he realized he had not taken into account the direction and set of the tide, which was with them almost all the way. A helmsman steering wrongly by only a hair's breadth, 1/48th of a degree, would find his ship 1/3 of a mile off its intended course after 100 miles. And with a skewing snowstorm and a pitch-black night, even noting such nautical errors was out of the question. The Deutschland was in fact 30 miles from where Brickenstein thought it ought to be, a full hour ahead of his estimations and some 18 miles to the west, and heading with velocity for the very sandbanks he'd sought to avoid. Eilert Schiller was one of the 6 seamen serving as lookouts on the weather deck, though the storm conditions limited their vision to the point of uselessness. Just before 5, Schiller noticed to the port side a flash of light, then another flash as on a warning buoy. But when he reported what he'd seen, Captain Brickenstein presumed it was the beacon at the north hinder sandbank, whose fixed beam could have been interrupted by swells and clouds of snow. Soon he would realize it was the flashing warning beacon of a lightship anchored near the sandbank called the Kentish Knock, knock being a Celtic word for hill. August Lowenstein, reported for duty, discerned the captain's mystification about the position and took his own sounding of 17 fathoms. Seaman Forsenstein held a coal oil lantern over the bucket as Lowenstein examined its contents and lifted a handful. Sand, he said, and mussel shells. Oh no, the seaman said. Lowenstein ran to the pilot house with the news, and just then Captain Brickenstein noted the white horse heads of surf that indicated the underwater island of a sandbank, and he immediately telegraphed the engine room, "Stop, and full speed astern." Reinhold Schmidt promptly reversed the engines and studied the ship's exertions against a strong current, rising and settling with each higher swell, until there was a jolt against some hidden geology. Schmidt was shocked by a loud clanking sound, and noticed the dual engines racing as the drive shaft spun without resistance. The lone screw propeller had sheared off while digging into the seafloor. The captain, his mate, the English Channel pilot, and the helmsman felt this Deutschland drifting after the first jolt and braced themselves against the pilot house walls or held on to the bolted chart table for the impact that they felt was sure to come. Because December 6th was the gifting feast of St. Nicholas, Sister Enrica was sneaking into the sisters' quarters and depositing ribboned red tissue bags of hazelnuts and candies in each right shoe, and a mice and porcelain doll repaired with glue in each left. She just finished the secret deliveries when she was jousted against a door frame with the ship's first jolt, and she was in the corridor when she heard the mysterious scraping, screaming noise of the keel riding an underwater sand dune. And then there was a sudden, crunching, hull-booming halt to the motion that hurled her onto her hands and knees, skidded cutlery, dishware, and urns onto the dining room floor, and tossed the waking passengers in steerage like jacks. The incoming tide was at its highest level, and it slewed the ship around so that its port side was eastward and tipped down. Heavy, detonating sea swells crashed broadside into the run-aground Deutschland, flooding into the sizzling stokehole so that all the gaslights were extinguished, the hot glass water gauges burst, and a swamp of steam scalded Schmidt and his stokers until they rushed out into the howling storm of the weather deck. And there a swell broke across the ship, spilling a stoker who would have been lost at sea had his shoe not caught in a scupper. The night, the snow, and the vast cloud of steam that rose up from the ship made it impossible for Captain Brickenstein to see even as far as the giant funnel. And he was tortured by the certainty that already some of his crew were overboard out there in the tyranny of the sea, vainly waving their arms for a rescue that would not come in time, their voices raised in stricken calls that could not be heard. A great wave, the very size of the Deutschland, struck it in the full blast of 100 tons, slamming it almost onto its side, and the shock upended Quartermaster August Bach, who slid helplessly on his back on the deck until he banged hard into the pilot house, where Lowenstein reached out to call him inside. Winded after his brush with sure death, Bach could only manage lifeboats,